All right, Charlie Gasprino is at this Milken conference going on in Los Angeles right now. Charlie, now that's, I'm sure, an issue that's come up among investors gathering there, this idea that whatever the rationale behind accepting what seemed to be big domestic spending initiatives championed by the Democrats, it looked like the Republicans caved. I know that's a little bit simplistic, but that's how it looks. What do you think?
Yeah, listen, this place, I would say, Neil, is myopically focused on what they do. And what they're myopically focused is on business conditions and cutting business and corporate taxes.
Right.
That's one thing that they're also focused. That's one thing they're focused on. The other thing they're focused on is the carried interest tax, which is a tax on private equity. When they buy something, they keep it for a long time. You know, that's what private equity does. Takes stuff private, then they sell it later. They allegedly fix it up and sell it. That they get a tax benefit. Those are the two things they're looking at. Remember, the carried interest deduction is one of the things that the Trump administration, to pay for some of the tax cuts and other issues, the spending that they're doing, is trying to zero out that deduction. So that's what they're looking for here. And anything to keep those two things, namely getting the corporate tax rate down to 15% and keeping the corporate tax, keeping the private equity deduction. And you're going to see some pushback on private equity. Listen, it sounds like a benefit to fat cats, but let me tell you something. They're going to make an economic rationale for it. Why private equity is good. Private equity owns about, something like 10 to 20% of American workers work for companies owned by private equity. Private equity often buys those companies when they're in distress and fixes them up and sells them later. They obviously sell them for a profit. Sometimes they don't. But they're going to try to make the economic rationale for why that tax break is needed for private equity to survive. Right. So that's what's going on here. And I think the point you make about the budget, not much cuts here. There's obviously no entitlement reform, which, at some point we're going to have to get our arms around that. That puts more pressure on the need for deductions to be capped or eliminated. Right. And I think that's some of the stuff you're hearing here. So it's pretty interesting.
I'm sorry, buddy, to jump on you. You have an update on the Marlins situation now? Sure. And Jeb Bush, what can you tell us?
Well, what's fascinating about that, Jeb Bush came out today. It was an interview. By the way, it was a great interview between Jeb Bush and Terry Duffy, the head of the CME. Terry Duffy, I think, might have a future in TV, but he pressed him on the Marlins sale, and Jeb Bush sounded a very optimistic note. He basically said, listen, I'm going to handle the business side. Derek Jeter, his partner, the Yankee shortstop, star shortstop, is going to handle the baseball operations. They have tremendous support, he said, from both the city of Miami and investors. And if you look back on what we've been reporting on your show and on foxbusiness.com, Jeb and Jeter have to raise cash now, something like $1 billion, or between $800 million and $1 billion to secure this deal. That's very hard. A lot of people are doubtful about it. What he was saying today is that he was striking an optimistic tone that he can raise that money. Remember, they bid $1.34 billion. Major League Baseball demands mostly cash, not a lot of debt. The Marlins already have a lot of debt, but he sounded pretty optimistic. The flip side will come later today. To point out that Jim Gray is here at the Milken Conference, the sports commentator and reporter. He's going to be interviewing all the all the four commissioners of major sports, including the baseball commissioner. He's going to ask them point blank: are the Marlins, which loses money, really worth $1.34 billion? And what is going on here? So we're going to see exactly. We're going to get the other side of the story later on, and obviously I'll update that for you tomorrow as well.
All right, my friend. Thank you very, very much, Charlie Gasprino, over at the Milken Conference in California.